Greetings, everyone. You're listening to the Everything Went Black podcast. It's with great honor that I welcome Colin Burns to the show. Colin is an artist, musician, and all-around creative force. He fronted two of my favorite bands, Gritona and Slaughtershack. If you're not familiar with either of these bands, go on a mission and find their material. You won't be let down. I caught up with Colin during his stay in New York City. He was in town for his art opening at the Storefront Project down on Orchard Street in the Lower East Side. If you're in the city, definitely stop by and check it out. We recorded this episode out in the field, so the audio is a little roomy, and I apologize for that. I'd like to thank our Patreon subscribers. I appreciate your ongoing support. It means a lot to me. I'm going to try to continue and put out good content for you guys. If you want to become a supporter, a patron of the podcast, you can check out the Patreon account at Everything Went Black Media. There's a pop-up window. And for as little as $1 a month, you can help fund the podcast, keep the lights on, and help me out with some future projects. In return, you'll get some cool downloads and a bunch of other cool stuff that I plan to give away for free. If you dig coffee, check out savagegoldcoffee.com. You can find me, Michael Hill, on Facebook, Twitter, Mike Hill HQ, or on Instagram, Everything Went Black _ Mike Hill. Also, the podcast has a Facebook page as Everything Went Black, so please give us a like. And now, on to the show. Congratulations on the show last night.
Thank you.
It seemed very well attended.
Yeah.
How'd you hook up with the gallery?
They actually, there's a publishing house, I guess you call it, in LA called Cashmachine.
Okay.
And they put out, I do zines with them, put out one, paperback book that's all, I did the same drawing 100 times with a different caption.
Okay.
And we put out a paperback of it, kind of made it look like a noir, like a pulp paperback.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot. That's a theme, it seems like, in a lot of your work, which I've been observing your artwork for the last several years. So it seems like an influence for sure.
Yeah, definitely. B movies and noir and stuff like that. But so the guy Dan Monick, who runs that publishing house, he's a photographer, but he came to the New York Independent Art Book Fair.
Okay.
I think it was last February, and the gallery owner picked up a couple of my zines, and then she contacted me through Instagram.
Oh, okay. That's a big medium these days. It seems like it's eclipsing Facebook for communicating with people and stuff. It's weird.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to. I don't know. It's easy. The DM is a pretty effective tool.
I think so. Yeah.
And she contacted me, and I was like, yeah, but I didn't know her. And then I found out where it was, and I used to live 2 blocks from there when I was in New York. So I was like, oh yeah, that sounds great.
Well, welcome back to New York.
Thank you.
It's been several years since you've lived here, right?
Yeah, 15.
Yeah.
15, something like that.
And now you reside out in Los Angeles?
Yeah.
Was that like a career move? Or?
No. It was, I do the same thing that I work in a bar, the same as I did here. So it wasn't, it was more kind of a lifestyle change, and I'm married and knew that kids were probably in the picture.
Sure. And
it seems like an slightly easier place to do it than here.
I can't imagine trying to raise a family. We're in Manhattan right now, First Avenue, First Street area. I cannot imagine. And we're sitting in a Airbnb, and I can't imagine trying to raise a family in a setting like this.
Yeah.
You were saying you live just close by.
Yeah.
So that is seems like a logical move to relocate out west where you actually probably have space and like.
Yeah, and my wife's place in New York was a 5th-story walk-up.
Yeah,
and you just see people with the strollers in the subway, and it's oh my god, like just up and down those steps.
not too far from this location, I was visiting a friend that lived down here, and it was like I walked in, I got buzzed in, and as I was walking up the stairs, the interior of the building looked like the tenement at the end of Taxi Driver, you know, where Travis Bickle's gunning down all these like, you know, criminal types. And as I was walking in, one of the doors opened up, and like this young lady, like you know, probably like a graphic designer or advertising professional, was lugging her newborn kid down the stairs, and I was just like, man, like if this is like the 80s, you know, like you would never be caught dead in this neighborhood.
Right.
But the irony is that even though the neighborhood has come around, quote unquote, it's still a shitty place to kind of live, really. I have to, you know, I cannot recommend living in New York City to anyone, really.
Yeah, I definitely got, you know, I'm like, when it's 68, I have a sweater on. Like I've definitely become accustomed to LA.
Oh yeah,
lifestyle, you know.
That's Southern California weather.
I love it out there. I mean, I was always. It was the only other. I spent a lot of time there before I moved out there,
right?
And it was kind of the only other city that had the kind of the same kind of fascination for me as New York does. I feel like it's the only other city in America that has as much to offer. It's as diverse and as big, and but the temperature is pretty seductive.
Are you a James Ellroy fan?
Oh yeah.
See, that's whenever I'm in LA, I think of like LA Confidential,
yeah,
the Big Nowhere, and that whole thing.
Yeah, totally. I mean that like, and I mean my first time in LA, so many things that I'd read and seen like finally made sense to me, because I was like Raymond Chandler.
Oh, yeah.
I was just like, oh, it's taking the, you know, it goes from afternoon to nighttime because he's driving across town.
Yep.
Or whatever.
Yeah, totally.
And yeah, I mean that was a big. I feel like my first couple of years there, like I didn't drive before I got there, so I learned to drive out there, and I just imagine like all the places that could be a body dump.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know what I mean? It's like, it just, you're like, it's less so now. Like it's getting, the past few years have been tons and tons of gentrification and construction and new building and stuff like that. But it still has that. Still certain times of day.
Well, even like I just finished reading this book called Under the Big Black Sun, which is like
is it the LA oral history book?
Yeah, it was fair. There's a lot of like long-winded pieces by people that were more marginal, I think, than like, you know, like for example, Exene and John Doe have quite a bit in there. Rollins has like one piece, and like Mike Watt's got one piece, but then there's like all these other, you know, and like that's like the late 70s like punk days, you know, or bands that even like people who are into like Black Flag and like American hardcore type stuff, you know, probably don't know about the Screamers or, you know, Tuxedo Moon or any of those bands. And it's for that reason it's a good book to read, because it could turn you on to like some really interesting music. However, one of the things they bring up, being an East Coast person myself, is like the difference between like the East Coast punk and like West Coast punk, and how car culture and like that whole like, you know, SoCal like vibe kind of crafted the music differently than bands out here did, you know what I mean? And
yeah.
It's just like an interesting sort of like, you know, that kind of Dust Bowl like migration of people, like that sort of influence on those people versus like the East Coast, which is like more of like a recent immigrant, you know, like a lot of people that come to New York or Boston are like, you know, they're first generation like Americans, you know. People out in the West Coast are like, their families have been here for, you know, hundreds of years.
Wow, yeah.
Like this westward migration of people, and except for of course like, you know, the Chicano people that involved in punk and hardcore back then too. But yeah, it's just you know, having traveled out to Los Angeles several times and having a growing appreciation for that part of the country. But anyway, let's talk about the show last night. Okay. So I saw, I took some notes. I see a couple of themes recurring, The Cult Awareness Network. Okay. So what's that all about?
Well, I was watching. I mean, I've always been pretty fascinated with cults, and it's one thing. Like, if I'm having trouble being able to focus on reading something, if I find a new book on Manson,
okay,
I'm right there, and this is bringing back to LA just a little bit, but when I was leaving New York, and I was like breaking down my wife's place and my place, and still working 4 nights a week, and it was a struggle, and I was just like, what am I doing moving across the country? And I was walking down West 4th Street, and right in front of NYU, where they always have the books, I picked up a copy of The Family by Ed Sanders. I hadn't read that one before, and I was like, and it's it's still my favorite.
Ed Sanders one.
Yeah, just the language and the way he writes, and it's almost a parody of like hippie speak. And then it's kind of great yin yang to Helter Skelter, like the kind of tight Bugliosi, like rigid, and then this one's.
Well, Sanders wasn't he in
the Fugs?
Fugs, that's right. Yeah, so he was kind of a outsider, weirdo guy. Yeah. Okay.
And so that was like that, and then I was like, oh yeah, this is where I'm going, and that was kind of a great thing. But then, I mean, even with like all the La Gritona flyers, there was always women with knives, going back there. So it was subconscious, if it was, for a long time. But but more recently, and even actually when I first got to LA, we were on the west side, and I didn't have much money, but the Venice Library was pretty awesome, and they had a great esoteric and religious section in the public library, and so I was reading all sorts of books about any cult I could find. So it's been a long time.
Like Process Church type stuff.
Process and I think, I can't remember what they're called, the ones that do like Fishing for Jesus, any kind of thing. There was of course, Jonestown.
Yeah.
Like that.
Jim Jones.
Yeah. Because I picked up
Davidians.
Yeah. I was all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But I remember as a child, Patty Hearst was like just watching that on the news, and then I remember the day getting the newspaper after Jonestown, and those are just like, I was probably 12 when that happened, and it affected me. So I still read about those things a lot, and then just recently there was a kind of a slew of great documentaries on Netflix, and the Wild Wild Country.
The Wild Wild, yep.
And then there was another one that was just a one-off that was about an LA cult, and they mentioned the Cult Awareness Network in it as a way to. It was a place where you could go if you were afraid that one of your actual family members was involved in something, so you would call these people up. And they would help you reclaim them from the cult type of stuff. And but on Tuesday, as I was setting up the show, someone stopped in the window. I installed the windows, and I had the one that said Cult Awareness Network, and she was like, "I want to ask you about this." And she's like, "Did you know that the Cult Awareness Network got into some legal dispute with Scientology, and Scientology had enough money that they just absorbed the Cult Awareness Network. So now, if you contact it, it's actually, you'll be speaking to Scientologists."
Oh wow, that's weird.
Yeah. So I was like, I don't know if that's true or not, but I was like, oh, that's
like
awesome.
The ultimate in like corporate takeovers. Really, it's like, okay, we have an adversary here, and now we're just going to buy them out. They just gave them an envelope filled with cash, and they're like, okay, we'll go away. Because that's like, the Scientologists, that's like, they're almost like, the Masons or something like that. They're this long-reaching, influential group that no one really knows about, because every documentary that comes out, there's like a
squash.
Yeah, they squash it, exactly. So, who knows what the truth is.
Yeah.
another phrase I ran into was the uncanny valley. Okay, so now, but one of the things I like about your artwork is that there's imagery, which is mostly beautiful women or Christopher Walken. Okay, and then there's some sort of text that might appear to be unrelated. And I guess that leaves the observer open to interpret whatever image, whatever sort of free association they have with the artwork. So when I think of the uncanny valley, I think of just like when you're looking at something that is being presented to you as real, but there's like a sort of like event horizon point where it's fake or it can be real, but it's that sort of convergence of those points.
Yeah.
So I'm not exactly sure how that relates to the artwork, but that's like kind of what I was getting.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's also with all the like sex robots and stuff that they're trying to make. Like, there's a thing where there's the uncanny valley is when something. It's that disconnect between something that appears real, but isn't real. And it's just what you said.
Yeah.
But then so that now, like, some people are doing, when they're making the sex dolls, they're making them cartoonish enough to try to not have that effect. Try to. But then it's almost like, but then people are using the Snapchat filters that make them more look like the sex dolls, and then humans are getting plastic surgery to try to make them look like the way they do in Snapchat filters. So it's kind of just that that whole thing. And I'm also the sound of that phrase is great. It reminds me of like the big valley. I mean, the valley too. Like I think of California, I think of porn industry, but the uncanny valley just also like, is it a place? Like it has it conjures a lot of stuff in my mind.
Do you watch Westworld at all? Have you seen that?
I haven't yet.
Yeah, it's definitely it's like what we're talking about is addressed in that. There's second seasons of. I mean, I enjoy it. It's hard to follow at times. You almost have to like make notes, I think.
Right.
Because they jump through time a lot. There's like these weird parallel storylines that go on in different segments of time, which adds to the sort of, like confusion of it at times. But yeah, it's similar to that, Now, one of the things, it's interesting. It's like the AI, like in our society, and on the train over here, I was thinking about artificial intelligence because everyone's on their phones. I'm listening to music on my phone, and I was thinking about how, like in this city particularly, there's all these people crammed together, and time travel, I guess, physically is impossible. However, if you were to be some sort of being that existed in all time frames at once, then maybe artificial intelligence was actually the entity that took the chimps and like fucked with their DNA to make humanity so that we can create artificial intelligence. I don't know. It's like that just popped into my head when I was like coming over here, and I was like, it seems related somehow. Yeah. And maybe it's because I was seeing Uncanny Valley written on the walls last night.
Yeah. That's a good one. Yeah, it's weird. The phone thing is just, it's insane. But I completely rely on it, and I've worked in bars for so long, and just the progression from being a place where people talk to each other or don't talk to each other, or I converse with them or not, and now it's like 8 different people sitting around and everyone's on their phone. Like it's
kind of disconcerting, I think, too. And also, I don't like the access that people have to me these days. But like, if you don't respond to a text message right away, or an email, or a phone call, like they're like, I know you have your phone on, so where are you? It's like people can. What I long for was back in the 90s. You and I both lived in Boston at the same time, approximately. I used to like disappear for hours, man. I used to be able to like, I lived in a house on Hooker Street in Lower Alston. A bunch of people lived there, and I would come home from work sometimes, and no one would be home, and I would just leave. I would just go take a walk. I'd go to like Harvard Square. I'd walk around the area, and I would be gone for literally hours by myself. And if someone needed to get in touch with me, I came back and there'd be a notepad, so-and-so called, Todd's Niles called, call him back, But that was the only way someone could get a hold of you.
Yeah.
To get a message, and then slowly like beepers, and now we got these like leashes that everyone has accepted as like this like restriction of like freedom that people have just taken on, you know? And it's like, it's but we're so deeply connected to the technology, and there's definite uses for it. But there is this sense of that maybe the AI existed over the infinite time stream, and they implanted this so we can create them. Maybe they're slaves.
Yeah, no, it's definitely. We're all slaves to these things.
Yeah,
it's crazy. I used to love just walking around, and I didn't have one. I got one in New York, and it was late at my time in New York.
I was a late adopter too, actually.
And I liked, I was like, well, people, if they know my schedule, they know where to find me. They can call my house, But I liked that not being to be found.
So the fascination with Christopher Walken, I know that's another long-standing theme in your work.
Yeah.
So is it just because he's a cool guy, or?
Yeah, I mean, I love film, and he always straddled that line between spooky, scary, sexy, and his delivery was like no one else's. But then King of New York especially has like long been one of my favorites, and Dead Zone is, I think, a masterpiece of.
Because those characters, specifically those characters, appear in your work.
Yeah.
Like King of New York, Dead Zone, At Close Range.
At Close Range, yeah, which is a great one, and then Nick from The Deer Hunter, and Jamie something from Dogs of War, and then the True Romance.
Oh yeah.
One
cameo in there.
Yeah.
Also, there's a little film called Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead.
Oh yeah. That's the Shits and Giggles one, right?
Dude,
is that the?
He's like this head, basically. That just he's in the film, here and there. Like he's like some mob boss or whatever. But that's another film.
That's the boat drinks one, right? With Andy Garcia.
Yep, Andy Garcia.
Yeah. I like that one too. Yeah, no, and then La Gritona had the way the Frank White 45.
Yep.
All the lines were from him. I think in my last few years in Boston, I had a television that was just like a monitor. Like I didn't have any reception, and I had a couple of movies. I had Russ Meyer's Beyond the Valley of the Dolls and King of New York that were just on constant repeat. And so so I've been obsessed with him for a long time. And so a friend of my wife's had a Christopher Walken T-shirt on one night, and she was like, you could do him better. And I'd been only drawing women for a long time, and I was like, I'll give it a shot. and then I couldn't stop at one because I didn't, I was like, he's got so many different looks. So I did the series, and then the woman who runs the gallery was like, I want these in the show. I was like, all right, fair enough.
Now, the muse in most of this artwork are women, and there's a couple of notable faces in there: Madonna, Shelley Duvall, and then just other people in there. I mean, now, and it's all primarily black and white with like a little bit of color here and there, maybe some red, and then there's always, I think. There's always text, right?
There's probably like 85% of the time there's text, something like that.
So what is the what's sort of behind all that? I like women, I like looking at beautiful women, but I feel like the selection of some of the more well-known images, is there any kind of connection between any of this?
Mostly it's. There's a lot of stuff from the 70s and 80s. There's a lot of kind of B-movie imagery. I did like 4 or 5. I don't even know if they all got in there of Sybil Shepherd, and I was like, I didn't even know that I found her that compelling. but like a lot of times I'm just searching for images that speak to me, kind of, and I kind of do it on it's a pretty gut level of what makes me choose certain people, and then once I find that there's someone that I used for the romantic goth piece that was in the window, and I didn't even know, I didn't even see the woman's name, and then I found out, like I was like, oh, I need to find that picture again and find out who this was. And it's this French actress named Michelle Mercier. And I think still haven't seen any of her films, but I've done 8 or 9 drawings of it because she had all these different looks, and it was all like of a type, like very kind of 60s vibe, and
esque kind of vibe.
And but also I like that, like I wasn't familiar with the actual source of it because it's a little bit slightly less overdone, so it's, I mean, I feel like it's a kind of it's a pretty instinctual search for these pictures.
Something whenever I go to these events at art galleries, I noticed, going back to the digital age we live in, that people are taking photos and like shooting video and all this other stuff. How do you feel about that? I mean, I feel like for me it's like kind of like a faux pas to do that with someone's work.
I have to say now, like it doesn't bother me at the art shows the way. Let me a couple things about that. It doesn't bother me at my own art show. There are certain pieces of art that feel like they're like Instagram selfie things, when that becomes that, like, fortunately I didn't see so much of that last night. If I see people taking picture of the actual work, I'm not mad, and I'm like that maybe they'll tag me, maybe they won't, and I had an interesting thing happen last night where I had used someone's photograph and it was of a friend of mine, because some of the women are people that I know.
Okay.
And he introduced himself to me, and he was like, where'd you get that source? And I was like, she posted it on Facebook, and he was like, I took that picture. And I was like, oh wow! And I got kind of nervous, but I was like, I was like, well, I'll send you a copy of the print. And he was all right with that, and then he stayed for a while and seemed to enjoy the show.
That brings up a really interesting point, because these days everyone's posting photos, they're appropriating things and all this other stuff. So it's like, what is the actual ownership of some of this stuff? If somebody takes a photo and they post it publicly, is that fair game? It's almost like sampling in hip hop.
Yeah, or something. I mean, it's like recently H&M and someone else had these big things because they took photos of like graffiti by some well-known people, and then like put out shirts with it, and without consulting the artist.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's one thing, like when it's like going to be some
commerce involved.
Yeah. But it's still a very ambiguous thing, and I tried. So for a while, I tried to use models I was doing stuff with actual people where I was taking the pictures and doing art from that. But in terms of my schedule, it was just really hard because work and children, and also if I'm doing stuff that is slightly if they're naked or whatever, then I have to find a place to do that. Because once this is a pretty good story. I was doing this photo shoot with a friend of mine in a public park in Los Angeles. And it's way over on the west side, and I wanted the sense that there was water behind it, and she was naked and with a knife.
Okay.
And we tried to get there early in the morning, but it still took some time to get out there, and because I wanted to get there kind of before anyone started to walk their dogs. But some woman saw us, and before long we were kind of on the top of this hill, and there was a helicopter flying around.
LA, man.
And we got down at the bottom, because there's only one trail out of the park, and there were police and park rangers there, and they took my memory card from the camera, but I was able to get it back. They confiscated the knife because it was like too long and all this stuff, and nothing ever came from that. But it kind of put a damper on like doing these outdoor shoots for me and stuff. And then she got that model, got married, and was less likely to pose.
Be naked.
Yeah.
In public.
Yeah. And but we had a great connection, a great rapport working together, and so then I was kind of in a place where I was trying to find subject matter for shows, and I was looking up on Google. I was trying to find some stuff. This was before Trump. This is a few years ago, before that kind of Russia stuff. But I was thinking about Russia and like what I knew about it that I knew from just being a kid, and like so I was looking for some images of Russian school kids in the 70s, and I was trying to Google it, and Google kept saying, would you like to look at Russian mail order brides? And I was like, I don't know. So I resisted the first like 5 or 6 times that Google suggested it, and then finally I was like, okay, show me the Russian mail order brides. Yeah, exactly.
AI. Yeah.
And I was directed by it, and there was all these pictures, and it was all of women, and they had a slightly 80s or 90s vibe because it seems like behind the times.
Yeah, they're like 20 years behind over there, you know.
And
style.
And anywhere from like there's some like pro shots, and then a lot of kind of awkward stuff. Like it was a whole range of things, and I drew one, and I was like, oh, this is something. And so I started doing that for a while. I would do kind of small drawings of these Russian mail order brides, and then I blow them up pretty large. And I did a whole series of that, and then that kind of enabled me to get over my resistance to using, which I'd done before, but just imagery that was out there. And I was like, all right, this is what I'm doing right now.
Now with the tactile zines that you do, which is like, I think those are pretty awesome. Just I have a couple of them, you know, and you've sent me some. And holding a book in your hand these days is almost like a rare experience, you know, especially even like, I mean, I love comic books.
Yeah.
And you know, with like things like Comixology and all the like Marvel and DC have their like digital platforms, even that's becoming like, you know, digitized. We're not actually holding a tactile thing anymore. So is there any sort of like concept behind like, you know, each zine, or is there like what inspires you to do that? Like what's the concept? I
love holding paper. I mean, I read books on a device now, but I've tried to read comics on a device, and it doesn't work. And
for me, it doesn't.
Yeah, no, it's terrible.
Yeah,
it's like it's wrong.
I agree with that 100%.
And I mean I go through stages where I was doing. I think my last couple years in New York, I was doing the like almost cartoony type of drawings, always with a caption with those. And then, you know, Raymond Pettibone is a huge influence on me. I think it's pretty apparent.
Yeah, definitely.
But I remember there's a place in Allston, right on Brighton Ave. It was in the second store. It was like it was like really close to where I lived. It was right between, I think, Brookline Ave and Linden Street. And it was just, you know, it's where you could find like apocalypse culture books and stuff.
Oh, Fly Rabbit. Was that it?
No, it was before that. And it was like, I think it was called the Allston Mall. It was
okay.
And it was like upstairs. I can't remember the name. Primal Urge?
Yeah, something like that. That's where G.G. Allen like punched some girl in the face, I think. Yeah.
Probably. Yeah, so that must have been the place.
That's the spot, yeah.
And I was living pretty close to that. I think it was on Ashford Street or something. And they had a bunch of the Raymond Pettibone zines. And, you know, it'd be like, oh, I can afford $1.25, $1.50. and I still have them. But those were some of the most that was perfection to me.
Yeah, definitely.
And like so eye-opening, and obviously, I knew the work from Black Flag and the Minutemen, and that connection with the music, there was nothing else like that. Like to me, that was like the best symbiosis of music and art that I.
Like, I remember the first time when I was like in high school or whatever, when I first, seeing, I think it was actually the Family Man album cover. And then after that, Slip It In. Those are like the first 2 records by Black Flag. Because, I mean, this is back in the 80s. So, like, you couldn't get at any of this stuff.
Right.
You had to know exactly where to go to find these things. And it wasn't like you'd go to a record store and there'd be like the entire catalog would be available. It's like sometimes you would have a Family Man and Slip It In were the only 2 records that you had, and it was like so incredibly exactly representative of, even though they weren't necessarily developed to be representative,
right? Yeah,
but somehow it was maybe because they were brothers, Greg Ginn and Raymond Pettibone, but they were exactly hitting on the same wavelength of a time and a place, I think, at that particular junction in our continuum here. Greg Ginn with his discordant take on like punk rock music and hardcore, and Pettibone with his like distorted dystopian view of culture being expressed by his single line drawings. There's nothing like it. And there hasn't been anything like it, really.
No. Yeah, it was lightning.
Actually, just on a whim, you mentioned that you like comics, right? So does the name Nestor Redondo or Alfredo Alcala, like any of these names, like, does that ring a bell with you?
Yeah, but I those are artists?
Yeah, they're artists, and they were like, they did like, back in the 70s, it's like there was, was looking to cut corners, and it was trying to find a way to get more value for your dollar. Marvel Comics and Warren Publishing, they ended up outsourcing a lot of the artwork for their larger format magazines, like Savage Sword, Conan.
Right. Okay. Oh, both those guys did Conan.
Yeah, these South American artists, and some of some of your artwork reminds me of like Nestor Redondo.
Oh wow.
Who did a lot of like all of his women with these like dark haired,
I'll have to, because I used to do Colin the Barbarian drawings when I was a kid. I was big in Barry Smith.
Oh yeah,
Barry
Smith. Yeah, totally.
Mind blowing. I do recognize those names. I'm gonna have to take a look at that because
especially the women, like the drawings you have of the women. It was like, I'm like, wow, that's like very much like and in those larger format black and white magazines, they were like naked, and there was like they're a little racier than the color versions, standard versions of the comics. But actually, we were talking about Boston. It's like you were in 2 bands that I worshipped when I lived in Boston, Slaughtershack and of course La Gritona. And anyone who's listening to this podcast knows how much reverence I have for La Gritona. I don't talk a whole lot about Slaughtershack, but like, I think it's worth talking about, really, because it's like, you guys were like kind of like Slaughtershack and La Gritona, both I feel like were either slightly ahead of their time or slightly a couple years too late.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know that you have like more of an art background. So how did you actually get into music, though? I mean, didn't you go to the museum school?
Yeah. We went to museum school.
Yeah.
And Dana from Slaughtershack actually, the first year I was there, I got a studio, and we were in. This is before the school was redone. I think it was the last year before they built. Like the new building was under construction, so they had some rental stuff. So they had a studio. It was in the Wentworth Institute of Technology building, and it was in the basement. And it was like, it was a fire pit, fire trap, like kind of into that area. Like you could still smoke cigarettes down there. And it was like we were like down the hall and all the way the last room, and there were maybe 6 of us in one room that was broken up into little things, and I had a pretty small stall, but right next to me, Dana Ong had a stall, and there was like, if we were the only two people, there was like one boombox for the room that had a radio. Mm-hmm. And if the other people were in there, like everyone would play WFNX, which is like new wave top 40-ish stuff.
Definitely.
But if they came in and Dana and I were there, she'd be like, do you mind? And I'd be like, fuck yeah, put on your stuff. And it was Stooges, Gun Club, Birthday Party, Black Flag. And it was all like stuff, we just immediately had this bond.
Sure.
And
that happens, you know, when you meet people who, back then especially, you know, like there's no one listening to this music really, you know.
And also the work that she was doing was dark and heavy, and I can't remember when it was, but she's like, do you want to, she's like, I'm putting a band together, do you want to come down and try to sing? And I was like, yes.
Had you sang prior to that though?
I'd sang a couple times in high school. I had friends that had bands, and I was always into music. I had friends that had bands, and I performed. Once was Roadrunner by the Modern Lovers at a talent show at high school, and I think once was Roadrunner and White Riot by the Clash, and then another time I did Anarchy in the USA, like 2 different performances. So it was. And I mean, and there really wasn't. There were maybe 3 people in the school that knew what I was doing. You know, it was like,
I know the feeling.
Yeah. And I always read rock bios as a kid. You know, and everyone from England, every band from England seemed to have met in art school, and so I was like, if I go to art school, maybe I'll find a band. Like I knew that I couldn't play guitar well enough to go to music school.
Yeah, definitely.
And I didn't really have any interest in going to music school, but I was like, when I get to art school, I'll find the music. And I did. And so, and we were all, Dana had played before in St. Louis with some people, but everyone else in Slaughtershack, we were all first timers.
Now the thing about Slaughtershack too is like, I think like what you guys started, where you started and where you ended were almost 2 different things.
Yeah. It was a crazy, trajectory.
Yeah.
And involved a lot of changing members.
Right.
And because when I started, it was me and 3 women, and then by the end, Dana was the only woman.
Yeah.
And we went through a lot of people and kind of, progressed and changed as it went along.
Because it was pretty like metal towards the end.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, it was like more like Swans kind of like weird,
definitely
noisy.
like Butthole Surfers, Sonic Youthy, like that. That's what we were aspiring to. I feel like at the beginning, and Gun Clubbish in a way, like these things, and then kind of with elements of bluesy shit, and then by the end, it was almost straight ahead.
It was a heavy metal. You know? It was like Trouble or Danzig or something like that. You know, like kind of like maybe not as like stony as like Trouble, but there was like a mid-tempo metal hard rock kind of thing going on. Which I thought, but I still thought, fucking stuff's awesome. Almost, and I've made this statement. And I don't know if like it's true or not, but I feel like without ever meeting you, I've known so much about all this band because I used to go watch you guys play when I was in college, and it was like, oh yeah, they play with this band White Zombie, and a friend of mine, a high school friend of mine, was a guitar player in White Zombie for like a period of time. His name was John Ritchie.
Oh, okay. I knew Jay.
Okay, yeah, he was before Jay.
Oh, okay.
Right. I remember I ran into John like in Christmas break one day, and he's all like, it's like some metal dude with like a denim vest and everything, and baseball hat, backwards. And I'm like, what are you up to, man? He's like, I'm playing this like total devil band called White Zombie, right? And like the time frames of what you guys were doing, and they're not so much the techno version of what they turn into, but the Make Them Die Slowly album is like, there's such a similarity between Slaughtershack and White Zombie that I wonder, do you guys ever play shows or
we played a couple, maybe at least two times, and always in Boston. Like I feel like we played at the Rat with them, maybe somewhere else. I feel like it was more than once. Rob Zombie was just a real dick.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not in any way trying to equate the two bands.
Yeah,
together,
no. It's
stylistically, there was.
Yeah, no. There was definitely, and I mean, I feel like it's kind of thing. I was super young and super competitive, you know, and like you wanted your band to be the best, and I was also really shy, and so I didn't know how to reach out to other people in other bands if I was interested. Like I didn't really have that skill set.
Yeah,
I feel like, and you know, super defensive, like oh no, we're heavy or whatever.
Sure.
And so I never kind of made nice, but I know we tried to make nice with Rob a couple times, and he was just he was.
Dude, believe me, I'm the king of not making nice with people, man. I believe it. I'm totally on the same page as you, man.
And so and then when it became like but the what was it? Shauna, was that the bass player?
I think so. Yeah.
She was like super sweet to us and stuff like that. I mean, I think we played at Axis with them too.
Okay.
Maybe that was it.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, I didn't connect up with them, though I always had an eye on it. You know what I mean?
Because I heard you guys way before I heard them. And I was like, man, this is like, you know, because when John got involved in that band, that's when suddenly you're able to find their records. Like they had 2 records out that were like the metal version of the band. It was like Make Them Die Slowly and like Soul Crusher or whatever. I think Iggy Pop like shouted him out in some interview I read one time. And I was just like, man, this sounds a lot like Slaughtershack, man. And I was just like thinking like, you know, since I heard you guys first, I was like, man, you know, sometimes there's like a little bit of this, you know, influence that goes on. And I always thought that, you know, Slaughtershack was a way more interesting band, like musically.
Thank you.
And especially like knowing that the band started in one place and turned into something else. And I always liked that because, you know, even Prong, like that band Prong, like they started out more like a noisy, like Live Skull kind of band.
Right.
And they became like this like tight metal band or whatever, you know. And then whatever, they did more even industrial type stuff. But I always found it interesting that you can make music that maybe people that listen to it are fans of, say, one specific genre, but when you start talking to people that are in the band, they're like, oh, I like Killing Joke, and I like, you know, Black Sabbath, and I like Slayer, and I like Joy Division, and like all this stuff, and it just generally, I think that makes the band more deep and interesting, as opposed to a bunch of dudes who have the same record in their record collections. You know? Yeah,
definitely.
So yeah, I mean, that was just my little take on that, you know. And then La Gritona was like another band that, you know, I mean, Taz and I played together briefly, you know, in the beginning of another band that I had.
Anodyne, right?
Anodyne, yeah. Which is like kind of a rip-off of La Gritona in some ways. So why not, you know, if you're going to do a band that's influenced by another band, why not steal one of their members, you know, or play with one of their members, you know. But that, I remember seeing La Gritona when you were Suicide King. And the 2-guitar lineup.
Yeah, with Dean.
And then you look completely different in that band. And I was like, when I heard you sing though, I'm like, that's the fucking guy from Slaughtershack. And I was like, okay. And then I started paying attention to what you guys were doing. But then it morphed into La Gritona. So, and you're still doing music too, or you have done.
I've done stuff in New York. I played with Dana and I played together again for a few years, but unfortunately, no recordings of that.
Damn.
And that band was great. It was great. Whatever. It was great to play together. We were called Lupa Voluma.
Okay.
And played with another guy, Jamie and Donovan, and it was definitely more like I feel like it was. I was big into Laughing Hyenas at the time. Like totally. It was kind of more along that vibe, like it was a bit more rock than metal, blues kind of thing, and like we got to play. We played like Coney Island High once a month, and played at CB's, I think so. But we were like throw gear in a cab and drive somewhere. But it was all it was all the neighborhood, but it was all awesome. I mean, it was like that was fun.
I'd like to have seen that. Yeah.
And then I did the Finger record, which we never played live. That was all just done in the studio.
You did that Snyder's studio, right? Was that?
No, that was the finger stuff was done at Pellegrosso
Okay.
studio. A friend of mine in the past, it was his studio, and but the Schneider stuff, it was Murder Baby. Which
that's what it was.
That's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
guys that I collaborated with. Like when I left.
That was a great name, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, but that was an awesome project. Chris Vitale played bass in that, and Matt Martin, who's from Boston. Chevy Heston. Did you ever remember that?
Okay, yeah.
So it was him, and then David Hochbaum, who was part of Goldmine Shithouse, played drums, and Travis, who's part of the Shithouse, played theremin. And then, and then when we recorded, we had a bunch of guests. Dana actually played on that record, and from Stompbox guitarist. Jeff.
Yeah.
And
sick guitar
player. Yeah. And
I was just talking about that band, actually. That's like one of these bands that no one knows about either. That's not like there's a series of bands.
Yeah.
Bull Volta, who was on a major label that no one knows who the fuck they are, and they're great.
Yeah.
Stompbox, who no one knows who they are, and they're good. I'm not gonna say they're great, but they're a good band.
Yeah.
But the guys in the band are cool though. Very cool guys. And gifted musicians.
Oh yeah, he's incredible. Yeah. But that was the most fun I ever had in the studio. That was incredible. With that, because the Goldmine Shithouse was a art collaborative work, and our usual. We started just as I was leaving New York. Mm-hmm. We started working together, doing art, and then so we would get together on Saturday nights and paint. And the three of us, me, David, and Travis, were like, oh wow, this is really turning into something great. And then after a little while on Sundays, we would go and play at Todd and Matt Martin, Todd Perlmutter, who was in Japapono and Orangutan and Blue Man Group. So he had a place over on 6th Street between B and C or something like that. Yeah. And he had a recording studio in the basement. And so we would... And so Matt lived there, and so we started playing music on Sundays. So we would make art all night, Saturday night, and it was like total like improv stoner metal stuff. We'd come up with a riff, but it became this really like a way to really strengthen our vocabulary in a short amount of time. And I would put or someone would put words in a painting on Saturday night, and then I'd sing about them the next day, and then Matt would record us, and then he would write down what he thought that I was saying, and then that in turn would become the name of a painting or the name of a song. So it's just like this total like weird game of telephone type of thing.
Cool, actually, yeah.
And then so when and we only did a few shows, we played live, and it was kind of, we always had like a few riffs, and we would just improv and would have guest guitarists who never even practiced with us come up and play. Dana did that live, and Joan Wasser and Allegra, who used to work at Coney Island with me, and it was super fun.
It sounds like fun.
Yeah, but then when we did the record with Andrew, it was right before my first son was born, the summer before. But we did the same thing where when we were making art, we would go and live in a gallery for 2 weeks and make the show in that time, and just live there and be open all the time, have people come in, and that like the story of how we made the work went into the show, and it became this whole thing. But we did the record in a similar way, where during the day we made all the art. We traded art for the recording,
right?
And so we couldn't record till after 6 because of where the studio was.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, there was like businesses. Yeah, and generally it was nighttime work. So during
the day we'd make paintings, and then at night we'd work on the record. And then it also just kind of, as a singer especially, I spent so many times in the studios. Like when we did the La Gritona record, I read 100 magazines about PJ Harvey, because that's what was there. But it was always very anxiety ridden, and this was like, oh, okay, I can do stuff while and that was super fun.
Yeah, you sit around a lot if you're like in general in a band and you're recording, but if you're just doing vocals, it's like you're just waiting for everyone to finish their parts and everything, and it can be stressful at times. Yeah, actually, like a couple records ago, our bass player, we were there for a month, and like he didn't do anything for 3 weeks. He just sat there and practiced essentially, and like got food and drank coffee, and that was it. Then like I'm like, damn, I can't imagine just like how stressed out I would be stressed out, just like waiting for like, to go out there and do my thing, you know, like that. But so like one of the things about the work that you've done in music is like the lyrics. Okay, now do you find it hard to write lyrics, or how easy does that come to you?
It's you know, I'm lucky in that 2 or 3 songs in my entire history. I mean, of actual performing bands and stuff like that, like excluding the Murder Baby, which was almost all just off the top of my head, and that was due to the way we recorded it was without any practice, and that was with Jesse Mallon and Johnny T and Ryan Adams playing guitar. He was friends with all the, like, worked with them, not with Ryan, but he was friends with Jesse, and they were like, "Oh, we want to do this hardcore band. Do you want to sing?" And I was like, "Yes." And so then we just went into the studio. I didn't know how it was going to go at all, but they just wrote the songs, and I was sitting in the booth, and then they were like, "And we're doing vocals next." And so we did it all in like one day. First,
like the way like Husker Du and those bands used to record, you just kind of go in there and do it all in one day.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that Husker Du at least wrote the songs. Like this was just I hope so, because otherwise I don't know how they made such great records. But so that was like a real. And I know that there were a couple of songs that I was like, I think Ryan wrote the lyrics to one of those songs. Anyway, like, but working that way a couple times really opened me up to being like, oh, I can work like that if I want to. And that's how, when I'd done that right before Murder Baby. So that was, but other than that, when I'm actually writing stuff, like there are a few songs where it just comes together, like maybe someone's playing a riff in the studio and I just start singing, and then other times I belabor it over like a word, a phrase, and I do anything else. You know, it's my only equivalent of now is like when I do a art show, I have to write an artist statement, and it's like I'd rather go to the dentist, and I'll find anything else that I can possibly do. And I'm thinking about it, but it's the hardest thing for me to do. So sometimes lyrics have that.
I like dread writing lyrics, man. I mean, I write so much of other stuff besides lyrics that you would think that writing would be something I enjoy, writing lyrics, but it's like...
Your writing's really good.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, seriously, because I work really hard at it.
Yeah, no, it's the most intelligent writing about metal that I've read.
Oh, thanks. So. Thank you. With that said, I have a hard time writing lyrics because it's like... I'm changing them as we're tracking. Like I'm like, man, this word doesn't work here, or like something. It's like such like, like, and the other thing too is like you can track guitars when you're not feeling well. Like you could be like tired or whatever, but you have to be like completely in the moment when you're singing. So it's like you can't have a cold, you can't be tired, you can't be like full from dinner, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like on the last album, like I played bass and sang. I played a lot of the instruments on our last record, and we would track bass during the day, right? So I would play bass all day, and then there was like a break for dinner, and then we would track vocals. So guess what? For dinner, everyone's like throwing down with these like fish dinners and stuff, and I'm like having like some mangoes and water and like, you know, nuts and stuff like that, because I knew I was going to be singing for like the next 4 hours after that. So it was like pretty brutal, but you can't be full. You gotta be like in that mindset to do it effectively, you know?
Yeah. I always had the you know, like, was it 1.5 slices of pizza between sound check and a midnight headlining thing? Like, it was terrible.
It's funny though how like it's a physical thing, you know. I mean, music in general, but vocal singing is like a, you know, especially like, you know, with intense delivery, you know, it's like it's a physical. It's like wrestling or doing kickboxing or something like that. You have to really be keyed in, like physically, you know. It's and you know, I don't know, it's like different, you know. And I'm always interested in what people do, like how they're. It doesn't sound like it's much different than what I go doing. But so one quick question about this. Last night you had a bunch of stuff for sale. You know, some original artwork, some T-shirts, patches, all that kind of stuff. Are the t-shirts hand screened?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
The patches are the only things that I got those made.
Yeah.
Those were made in China by some company in Florida or something. But I oversaw that, it was my design and everything like that. But the t-shirts I hand screened, so I don't know why.
No, I like that, man. It has that DIY, like it's a vibe. You know what I mean? And I like that.
I have a really primitive setup that's often frustrating, but
it's just such a great screen print. I mean, I don't know anything about. I can't really draw. I can't screen print or any of these things escape me. You know what I mean? But it's like I always really dug the idea of screen printing because it's like such like a tactile. Like I don't know how anything's made when it comes to like printed work or artwork or prints or anything. I have no clue. I just know I've seen people screen print, and the way everything's if you're doing more in one color, it's like separated and you layer everything down, and it's just like, and I've seen people do it in the bathroom of an apartment I've lived in, and then I've gone to like professional screen printing shops, and the process is all basically the same. And it's like so cool that you can do something like that. You can do like a limited run of shirts to sell at an art gallery, and it's just fucking rad, I think.
Right.
So, can people that are listening to this, and if they're curious about your work, what's the best way for them to find you?
One of my New Year's resolutions for the past 5 years has been to make a website.
Okay.
I haven't done it yet, and I know it's easy now, but
not as easy to think.
Cashmachine.la has a number of publications, so books, and I did this book called Cheap Dialogue.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's where it's the same. I did the same after one show. I was trying to keep momentum up and trying to find the right drawing instrument. And so I did the same drawing, like probably I did like 80 of them, and then with a different caption under each one, and then edit it down to about 60 of them, and then put them in a row. And so that's the one that looks like it's a pulp novel kind of, and that one's there. But then we also did an audio cassette, so there's like a book on tape that's like 3 3 minutes long. I did a couple readings of that, which is pretty hysterical because it was like a 5-minute thing. But so that they have some of the zines and stuff, and then my Instagram is Colin Burns Art. And I'm on Facebook, but if like everything that I have is for sale.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm getting at. It's like if someone wants to buy something, like these are the channels.
Those are the channels. DM me at Instagram at Colin Burns Art. Like honestly, like it might take a little while, but I'll be happy to get back to you. And one day, hopefully soon, I'll have my own website.
It's the name of the game these days, man. E-commerce.
Yeah.
It's a new idea that's out there. The kids are catching on to that. Well, thanks a lot, Colin. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
You're here visiting New York City. You got the art gallery, the showing going on.
Yeah, it's up till the 24th.
Oh, so people in the tri-state area, New York City people, where can they go look at your artwork?
70. It's at Storefront Project at 70 Orchard Street on the Lower East Side. 1 to 6-ish hours. I think they have a website. They are available online, so you can find out exactly when or contact them. And that's up till June 24th.
Oh, so there's still a few weeks for people to get down there and check it out. And so that's great, man. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.